So you want to compete in bodybuilding. You're so fucking excited about the prospect of getting up on stage, showing off your hard work, and being in the glam sparkly bikini at the end. And that is amazing. I love bodybuilding. It's literally my whole fucking life. But there is a lot about bodybuilding that you need to know before you get into the sport. And so today's video, I essentially want to make it everything you need to know before you commit to a prep. Obviously, this is top of mind for me at the moment. I'm right now on prep. I'm 5 weeks into my prep for my second season. I've also been having a lot of conversations with clients recently about getting on stage. You know, they want to get on stage next year or the year after. And so I've been talking to them about everything that goes into the process, the good and the bad. It's really important before you commit to something as big as a prep that you fully understand what you are signing up for. I am all about informed consent and making the right decision for you, because if you make this decision and it's not the right thing for you to be doing, it can be really detrimental to your health and to your long-term well-being. And I'm sure we all know, and I'm sure we've all heard the horror stories of people who jump into a prep too quickly and they end up having a terrible experience. They come out, they have a really terrible post-show, and then they're talking about how terrible bodybuilding is, when really it wasn't bodybuilding that was the problem. It was them rushing into it that was the problem. So today I'm going to sit down and break down some of the things that we should be assessing and addressing before we go into a prep, so that we can make sure it's going to be the best experience possible. At the end of the day, a bodybuilding prep is incredibly difficult. It's potentially one of the hardest things that you will ever do, but it is also something that can be a huge catalyst for growth and self-development, and it can really bring a lot of meaning to your life. I love the process of prepping for a show. I love the discipline that it brings me. I love the resilience that it teaches me. There is so much about it that I love, but that doesn't mean that there aren't still negatives and harmful consequences off the back of a prep. I definitely feel like these days social media has glorified bodybuilding just a little bit. We see videos of people getting up on stage, they're looking glam, they're doing their show day makeup, they're eating their post-show food, but not a lot of people talk about what does it actually take to get there, and what are some of the repercussions of bringing your body to a state of very low body fat and very high stress and high fatigue? What are the repercussions on your health, on your mental health, on your well-being, on your relationships, on the people around you? These are the things you have to think about before you go into the prep. So I kind of want you to think about this video as almost like my pitch against bodybuilding. I'm going to try and basically convince you why you shouldn't do this. And if by the end you still think, that sounds like something I want to do, then great, you probably are ready. Of course, before I dive into the actual video, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, because it really does mean the world to me. Don't forget to give the video a like, give it a comment, tell me what you thought you found helpful. Of course, I am a bodybuilding coach. I coach competitors to stage. So if you are interested in working with a coach and working towards this massive goal and doing it with somebody who is going to take care of you, then you can find all of my information for coaching down below. So firstly, I just want to dive into, what does a prep actually look like? What is the process? I think we all know it's a calorie fucking deficit, right? You are not eating a lot of food, you might be doing a lot of cardio, a lot of output, but there is more to it than that. A prep is incredibly regimented. It is going to take up pretty much every single aspect of your life, and it's going to affect pretty much every single aspect of your life. On a prep, it is 100%. There is no room for deviations. You know, there's no room for, oh, I was a bit hungry, so I'm just going to have an extra meal, or, you know, oh, I don't feel like doing my cardio today, so I'm just going to skip it. That doesn't happen, okay? Like, you have a very defined end goal of getting up on stage. If you mess up and you slip up, you are going to impact the look at the end, right? And, you know, you are going to be on stage in front of strangers, pretty much naked, and being judged by them. You probably want to give it your absolute all, okay? That's not to say people don't mess up on preps. It happens, you know, people mess up on their diet, but you should be going into it with the mindset that this, like, I am not going to miss anything. I'm not going to miss a step, a macro. I'm not going to miss my sleep. I'm not going to miss my training. I'm not going to miss any cardio. More than that, there's the posing element, okay? Like, posing is a huge part of getting up on stage. You need to make sure that you are drilling your posing, that you're learning your posing, that you have your posing learned before you even start the actual prep, so that that can be flawless when you're up on stage. In terms of the length of a prep, it's going to be completely dependent. It's going to be dependent on your start point, how responsive your body is to a deficit, the class that you are doing, the category that you're doing, because certain categories have a greater requirement for condition. You know, you might be doing figure or women's physique, where you have to be really fucking peeled. Maybe you're doing bikini, you don't have to be quite as lean. So that prep length could be anywhere from 16 weeks up to, I mean, it could be 30 plus weeks. I know some natural bodybuilders who do 30, 35 weeks preps. My first prep was 31 weeks long. long by the end of it, you know? So you are going to be dedicating a very large portion of your year towards your prep and towards this goal. And like I said, it is 100%. Everything is done to the gram, to the button. You know, everything you eat is tracked, accounted for, it's all weighed. Every meal is prepped by you. You're not just going out randomly, you know, during lunch and getting a fucking Chipotle. Like, that doesn't happen. You might have an hour of cardio a day. Some people might even have 2 hours of cardio a day. You might be on 10,000 steps a day, maybe 15,000, maybe even 20,000 steps a day. This is not unheard of. You know, at the extremes, when you're talking about females, especially smaller females who are maybe 110, 120 pounds, they could be on 800 to 900 calories and 2 hours of cardio by the end of their prep. This is things that people don't advertise and talk about, but unfortunately, to get stage lean, for some people, that's going to be the reality. Obviously, in some cases, we might have PEDs involved. You know, that depends if you're competing naturally or assisted. That is something to take into account. As well as that, you know, you might have check-ins every single day, multiple times a day. By the end, you know, you're waking up, you're taking your pictures, you're assessing your physique, you're sending it to your coach. Maybe you have to do it post-workout, maybe you have to do it in the evening, depending on what the peaking process is going to look like. Like I said, it's a very all-consuming thing. Every waking moment, there is going to be that, you know, thought in your head of prep. Like, you can't really escape it because of the nature of what you are doing, because how everything you do on a daily basis is geared towards that end goal. And in terms of what it feels like to be this lean, you know, to be like in stage condition, it feels completely shit. It's such a paradox because you look like the picture of health, right? You look like someone who maybe is going to be on the cover of a fitness magazine, but you feel like dog shit, right? Your energy is super low. Your motivation to train is probably low. Your strength is probably not so great. You're moody sometimes. You're quite irritable. You can be quite short with people if you're not careful. You know, maybe your temper gets a little bit short. Your cognitive function might not be so great. You know, you might find it hard to get your words out sometimes. Things like your sex drive, they are going down the toilet. You know, if you're getting into a prep, you want to make sure you explain that to your partner if you have one. Even weird things can happen in a prep that you end up doing, like weird behaviors around food, like guarding your food. This is one that, you know, when it starts happening, you don't even realize it's happening until afterwards, but you might get really territorial. You know, if you're trying to eat your food and someone's in the room, you're like, oh, leave me alone. Or if someone even comes near your meals, you want to literally slap them away. That's how weird you get when you are in this incredibly energy deficient environment. It's not that you're not acting like yourself, but you're kind of not acting like yourself. You know, your emotions can be heightened. You can be very sensitive. You can be very self-critical. That's another thing that can happen. Because again, like, you know, you have this goal that I am trying to look a certain way by a certain date and I'm being judged for that. I need to look a specific way relative to certain criteria for this class that I'm doing. So you're constantly asking yourself, like, am I there yet? Do I look lean enough? Am I big enough? Are my glutes big enough? You know, do I have the right balance? And it's a lot. Like, it is a lot. Again, like, it's not something to just enter into lightly. You have to be prepared for the fact that it is going to take up everything. And then in terms of some of the risks involved and what can happen, doing a bodybuilding prep is not good for your health, right? Like, we have to get that out straight away. If you are doing this to pursue being healthier, you are doing the wrong thing. Just do a general diet, maybe do a photo shoot prep and don't get super shredded. But first of all, your hormones, right? So most females will experience hypothalamic amenorrhea in the context of an extreme calorie deficit. This means that they will lose their menstrual cycle. And this is going to then come with impacted estrogen and progesterone production, which can have an impact on things like your bone health, your brain health, your reproductive health, right? Like, being in this state for a long time and being in this state, you know, year on year, probably not the best for your fertility. And I think a lot of people know that this can happen, but it's still worth reminding you, you know, if you're going into this and you already have some hormonal dysfunction, which I'm going to talk about this later, you know, it is maybe something to just flag beforehand. Things like your thyroid health, okay? So your thyroid is it's almost like the center of metabolism. So that is going to slow down. It's very sensitive to a calorie deficit. So as soon as you start eating less and moving more and losing weight, your thyroid is going to down regulate to try and conserve energy for you. So again, this is something to be aware of. If you have underlying thyroid disorders, you might want to just try and address that beforehand. Your body image can suffer as well. I think, look, I will hold my hands up and say, being stage lean, once you have been there and you have seen your body like that, it can be very difficult to go back to normal. And I see this with a lot of people who have to compete every single year because they actually can't stand just looking normal. They hate the way that they look with any body fat, even though them softer is still leaner than 98% of people. But it can be really difficult for your brain to see you go to such an extreme of leanness. And especially if you end up spending a bit of time there because maybe you're competing for 6-8 weeks, your brain will convince you that that's just what you're supposed to look like, that you are supposed to walk around with veins in your abs and striated delts and this crazy chiseled sunken in face. But you have to remember that that's obviously not normal, and that's not something that you want to be looking like in the long term. One thing that I always say about bodybuilding is if you sign up for bodybuilding, you're kind of signing yourself up to be a little bit dissatisfied with how you look forever. You are always going to be in a position where you could probably be bigger or be a little bit leaner, unless you are literally Miss Olympia, you know, the best of the best. There's always a way that you could be better, and you will see that, you know, like you will pick out holes in your physique. You know, when I take my check-ins, all I think is, well, that glute could be bigger, or I could have more of a quad sweep there, or my waist could be smaller. And it's just the nature of the beast. And that's why it's really important to be able to detach yourself from your body and understand that you as a human have so much more value than the body, right? And that's something that you have to do the work on throughout the process of competing, so that you don't get too attached to how you look like at a certain time. You know, there's no point in getting too attached to your body at any point within your bodybuilding career, because it's always changing, right? You're always probably getting leaner or getting bigger. You know, it's just like this thing that is so transient. And you know, the physique, you might have your physique now and really love it, but next week it might look different, and a month later it might look different too. So you have to be prepared for this and to be more committed to the journey and what it means for you and what it gives for you versus how it's going to make you look, because how it's going to make you look is temporary. You know, nobody stays stage lean. That's really fucking bad for you. And obviously there are a lot of other risks that can come on the back end. Post-show can be harder than prep itself. It is really challenging to come out of a environment where you've had such a huge goal that has been driving you to be incredibly adherent. You know, you've been not eating a lot of food, doing loads of cardio, training your ass off, and then suddenly that goal is gone. And this is where so many people struggle, because they can't stop eating. They find it really hard to go to the gym. They're really unmotivated. And it's maybe because their why for bodybuilding isn't strong enough, or maybe they haven't had the correct support, or maybe they weren't aware, they didn't have time to mentally prepare themselves for this. But it is something, you know, a lot of people do develop disordered eating patterns out of the back of a prep. And that's why if you have any underlying disordered eating issues, you probably want to either A, reconsider bodybuilding at all, because it might not be the best thing for you and it might exacerbate issues, or B, make sure you've taken the time to address them and work on them. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and say that if you've ever had an issue with food that you can't compete, because I'm someone who in the past has had a binge eating disorder and I compete now and I don't have any issues, but I spent years working on that and improving that so that it wouldn't be a problem. You can also risk even things like your relationships. You know, if you're a dickhead when you're in a prep, the people around you are not going to want to be around you just because you finish your show, right? Like, they're going to have a really negative relationship towards you in the process. They're probably never going to want you to compete again because you were such an asshole. So you have to be able to be self-aware within a prep. You know, notice when you're maybe getting a little bit short with people, getting a bit aggressive, and just make sure when you're in your prep, okay, maybe you can't go out for food with people, but give time to your relationships, nurture your relationships, because bodybuilding is temporary. You know, you're not going to be a bodybuilder forever, but your relationships should last and should be enduring. And so you should always be paying attention to them. Okay, so now that I've covered some of the risks involved with the prep and the things that can maybe go wrong, I'm just going to talk about a couple of things that you need to consider before you commit to competing, so that you know you're in the best position to do it. So the first thing I want to talk about is the cost of a prep. Competing is a luxury. It is so expensive. And I always make that very clear to anybody who comes to me and says they want to compete. You have to be prepared and be in a financially stable position. When we break down the cost, and I'm actually planning to do a video after my season, I'm going to do a video breaking down every single cost associated with my prep, just to show you exactly how much I spend throughout this. And that won't even be taken into account, you know, like my food, my gym membership and stuff like that. But I always say this to people: if you can't afford 200 to 250 euro, dollar, pounds, whatever on a coach, you probably can't afford to compete right now. And that is the fact of the matter. You must have disposable income to do this, okay? So when we break down the costs associated with competing, you have registration with the federation you're going to compete with. So I just registered for the NPC. That was $55. That's not a huge cost, but it is something to take into account. You might want to do multiple federations. You know, you might want to do the PCA, the INBA. You might want to also do the NPC. So you need to take that into account. You could be looking at anywhere between 50 to 200 euro. Then you have entry for the show. So I think the NPC is about 150 to 200 euro per class. So if you were doing, you know, novice and your open class, or junior and an open class, that could be like 400 euro just to enter the show. Things that might come with the show: photography, you know, that could be anywhere from 50 to 150 euro, depending on who the photographer is. You've got your tan. If you are a first timer, I always recommend get your tan done by the person doing the tan at the show. Your first show is not the time to try and do your tan yourself. That's going to drive a lot of stress. You might get it wrong. And I've seen people with bad tans that they've done themselves, and it really does a disservice to your physique. If you get your tan done by the show tanner, it's going to be the same as everybody else's. And it just takes away that stress, and like, they can do it, they'll take care of you, and they'll tell you exactly what to do. So that could be anywhere from, I'm going to say 80 to 150 euro, again, depending on who the tanning provider is. For females then, you've got hair and makeup. This could be anywhere from, again, 50 to 200 euro. It really depends. This is something that I personally have never paid for. I always do my own hair and makeup because I like doing it. I don't want to get up at 5 a.m. for a makeup appointment. I'd rather sit in my room, do it myself. There's loads of tutorials on YouTube for show day makeup. If people are interested, I can do one when I'm competing as well. But same with hair, like I can curl my hair myself. I don't feel the need to pay somebody to do it for me. But if you're someone who's not into that and you don't want to do your makeup yourself, then you're going to have to pay for it, and that's another expense. Again, for females, bikini, okay? This could be anywhere from 200 to 500 euro, I'm going to say. I think you could probably rent them for around the 150 to 200 mark. With a suit, I would not cheap out on it, because a badly made suit is not going to flatter your physique. A badly made suit might actually make it look worse. You know, go with a reputable suit maker. Somebody who, you know, a lot of people wear their suits. I maybe would, like, again, I wouldn't maybe go for the person who's just started making suits. Let them make their mistakes with other people. That might sound a bit savage, but again, there's certain things in a prep that I just don't think you should like cheap out on. And I think a good suit can make a difference. You can rent suits, again, like I said, you can buy them secondhand. You know, even when it comes to them fitting, I actually think it's how it's made more so than how it fits. Because, for example, I wore a suit in 2022 and last year 2 of my clients wore that same suit. We are all very different, and it fit all of us beautifully because it was made really well. So get a good suit, and that's going to be, again, if you're a figure competitor, it's going to be more expensive because the designs, they are more expensive. If you're bikini wellness, it's a plain suit, it might be cheaper. Most suit designers have different levels, so you could get a level 1, 2, 3, 4. As it goes up the levels, it's more crystals, more bling, more expensive. So again, you don't have to get the most expensive suit, but get one that fits well and it is going to flatter your physique. The judges don't care how many fucking diamonds you have on the suit. It actually doesn't matter. They care though how your physique looks in the suit. We've also got posing heels for girls. So that could be, I think my compact cocktail shoes were about £65. I also have the Olympians, the Shoe Fairy Olympians, they were £125. Again, you don't have to get the most expensive ones, but a good pair of posing heels is going to be important because you want them to be comfortable. Make sure you check the federation criteria for the heels and the size and the heel height and everything that they're allowed to have, but that's really important too. Something else associated with the shows that I forgot about is travel. So travel to the shows, staying in a hotel. You know, if you have to go to a different city, you're gonna have to stay in a hotel or an Airbnb maybe 2 nights before, or at least the night before. That's another cost that you might have to incur. The coaching itself as well. Posing lessons, you know, this is something that you should be paying for pretty regularly, especially throughout your prep. You probably want to be getting a posing lesson once a month, maybe even twice a month towards the end, because as your physique changes, you want to make sure that you're posing in the best way for it. You do not want to waste all your hard work by not putting in the time posing. So make sure that that is something that you have the funds for. You know, a posing lesson could be anything from 60 to 75 pounds for maybe a 45-minute session. There's a lot of places that have online websites with different tutorials. I highly recommend Limitless Flow Posing. That's who I do all my posing with. That's who I send all my clients to. I've been working with Sanaya for 3 years now, and she's incredible. And they have an entire video library with poses, transitions, and everything that you might need to know. So make use of those before you start paying for the one-to-one sessions, but it's still a cost that you might need to consider. And if you're an assisted athlete, if you're using any PEDs, you must be prepared to pay for blood work. This is a non-negotiable. You need to be monitoring this before the prep, during the prep, and after the prep to ensure that everything you are doing is safe, that you're keeping within the safe ranges for things like your hormones, your thyroid, and just making sure that you are staying as healthy as you can. So taking all of that into account, is that something you can afford? Okay, there's places, like I said, that you can save. You know, you can do your hair and makeup yourself. You don't have to go to the photographer. Jewelry, I forgot jewelry as well. Jewelry isn't too expensive. You're looking at maybe £6 for a pair of earrings, and you just have to get some bracelets and rings. You can get that maybe for like $20, €20. I keep saying different currencies, but you know, when you hear all of that, is it like, oh shit, I'm not going to be able to afford this? Obviously, you don't pay this all in one go, right? You can pay this off over the course of months. You can buy blocks of posing lessons. You can pay for your suit deposit early. You know, I paid for my suit deposits in the Black Friday sale, so I got a little bit of money off. You can pay for your registration early. You know, like you can buy your jewelry throughout the prep. So there's ways to stagger the costs, but you still need to make sure that you have that money set aside before the prep, ready to go, because prep is stressful enough. Okay, being in that state is stressful enough. You don't want financial stress on top of it. You don't want to be worrying about if you're even, after doing all this work, will you be able to afford to do the show? That is not what you want. You want to know that you have the money there and you've taken the time to plan the finances of the prep. Honestly, I would say having maybe $2,000 saved, that is probably what you're looking at. Because again, there's hidden costs. There's stuff that I have not mentioned there that I know comes up, I've just forgotten about it. And again, this is why I'm going to do the full breakdown video when I do my shows, but like there are other costs that are going to come about that you don't think about or that you don't realize. You know, even things like robes, you know, you might want a robe with your name on it. I don't know. So yeah, think about the cost. That is a huge one. Next up, we have your environment. So you really need to think about, is your environment supportive of your goals? Ultimately, you're the one doing the prep. You're the one who has to wake up, eat the meals, do the cardio, do the steps, do the training. But that can either be made harder or easier by the external conditions around you. Are the people in your life supportive? Are they people who are going to boost you up? Or are they people who are going to drag you down? Are they people who are going to question you at every single step of the way? Are they people who just have no idea what bodybuilding is? Maybe you need to sit down and just have a conversation with them, right? That's really important. Go into a prep and make sure the people around you know what you're doing. Because if you just randomly start getting super lean and super shredded and being kind of moody and hungry, people are going to wonder what's wrong. But if there's people in your life who are very negative and toxic, you either have a conversation with them, or you might need to take some time to just create some distance between you and them. You know, you need to address if you need to make any changes. It's really important. Even things as simple as your living environment, your home environment. I know these are kind of not directly related to bodybuilding, but if you're in an environment where you're miserable and you're stressed and you're anxious all the time, all of that is going to make prep a little bit harder. So make sure you address the environment. Make sure that the people in your life are going to be, if they don't even have to be supportive, it's not on them to be supportive. You know, like my family are quite supportive, but they definitely don't understand why I do what I do, you know? So they don't have to understand, they don't have to get it, but at least take the time to talk to them about it and let them know, hey, I'm doing this thing. This is why I want to do it. This is kind of what it's going to look like. For a few months, I probably won't be able to, I won't be able to go out to eat. I won't be able to drink, and just make sure that they know that, because you don't want to be in a prep and have people asking you every second day, oh, let's go to the pub, let's go to this restaurant. Make it clear. Don't be a dick about it, right? You know, don't be like, well, I'm doing this and you have to make it easy for me, but just let them know. Just give them a heads up. Hey, I'm going to be doing this thing. You're going to see me look like a skeleton in a few months. Don't be worried. It's temporary, but at least have them be a part of the conversation and a part of the equation too. Next thing you need to consider is, do you have time for prep? So like I said, there's a lot of things that are involved in the day. You're going to have to wake up. Maybe you have to go and do your steps, go and do your fasted cardio. You're going to have to train at some point. You're going to have to prep your meals. There's a lot. You're going to have to do your posing, you know, so are you in a season of your life right now where you actually have the time available to do that? Or are you working a job that is literally 12 hours a day and you're barely having time to sleep as it is, and you're super stressed because you don't know how you're going to fit it all in? Maybe wait until things calm down a little bit. There's never going to be a perfect time, and I always say life is gonna life. Whether you're on prep or not, things are going to happen, things are going to come up. You can't plan for 6-7 months of nothing ever happening. Of course not, right? You might have commitments, but equally you just need to understand that you are going to have to dedicate a lot of time in your day towards this goal. So you just need to ask yourself, where is this all going to fit in? You know, sit down, plan your week out, look at your calendar. Where is it all going to be managed? Okay, can you do it? I always say, like, you tend to find the time in a prep, you know, like you will make it happen. Especially, listen, if it's important to you and you really want this goal, you will make it happen. I always find myself, I become 10 times as productive in prep. I get so much more done because I'm high on energy. I've got this big goal. The adrenaline's pumping. I'm kind of hungry, which keeps me going. But you still have to think about the time component. You even have to think about, what do you have coming up this year? You know, do you have 10 weddings and 5 30th birthdays and, you know, loads of big life events that maybe you don't want to miss out on? Okay, maybe now this year isn't the best year. You know, my fiance Shane didn't want to prep this year because he has a few weddings and a few stag parties to go to, so he's going to prep next year after our wedding. But you know, even so, that's why he's going to prep. Well, I'm getting married next year and he's going to do his prep next year, so I won't prep next year. You know, I always look at my years and go, what year does it make sense for me to do this? You know, even last year, I didn't prep last year because I moved across the world and I just didn't want my first few months in a new place to be bound up by prep. I wanted to be able to go out and experience it. Even things like, are you going to change jobs? Are you going to move house? Is there really big life changes that are going to happen? Again, you can't predict everything, you can't foresee everything, but at least think about the year ahead. This is why when we look at the time component, I really encourage people to do a photo shoot prep first, a bit of a trial prep where, okay, it might not be as extreme. Well, it won't be as extreme as getting to the end of a prep, but you're going to have a lot of the same factors involved. You're going to have the steps, the cardio, the training. You can encourage them to do things like posing practice, you know, the meal prep, you know, saying no to things, making sacrifices. It gives them a chance to practice that in a lower pressure environment where the end goal isn't getting on stage. It's doing a photo shoot where you get to celebrate all of their hard work. It's a really nice way to just test the waters with a bodybuilding prep. If you've never done a photo shoot prep, I highly recommend that you do that first. Next up, I want to discuss stress management, which is incredibly important. Now, I'm of the opinion that the type of people who are drawn to bodybuilding, you either have people who are incredibly neurotic and very obsessive and rigid and type A, or you have the people who are chill as fuck. In my experience, females tend to fall on the neurotic side of the spectrum. It's usually the 300-pound bodybuilders who just are so chilled and relaxed. You know, the male bodybuilders. Most females, I think naturally we're a little bit more high strung, but especially the type who are drawn to competing, we tend to be just a little bit more on the, I'm not going to say crazy side, but slightly mad side, slightly insane. I mean, listen, everybody who does bodybuilding is a bit fucked up in some way. And look, that's okay, because that's probably what allows you to maintain the standards that you need in a prep to be able to give it 100%. But we want to make sure that that doesn't become toxic. If you're the type of person who completely loses their shit at any inconvenience, who has a really short temper, who finds it very hard to regulate their emotions, these are things I would encourage you to work on before prep. Especially if getting stressed leads you to do things like go off plan, overeat, skip the gym, you know, like rot in bed, lose complete motivation. This is, again, you can't do that in a prep. So you need to be able to work on the skills of managing that beforehand. You need to have a toolbox of strategies and things that you can lean on in stressful times, you know, whether that's journaling, meditation, reading, just going outside and walk. Maybe it is the gym, but you have to have these skills and, like I said, tools to utilize in moments when you are stressed. If you have a complete meltdown every single time something goes wrong, you are going to make prep so challenging for yourself, especially because as you get leaner, your tolerance is going to get lower anyway. So if you're already someone who gets super stressed and then you take that person and you diet them to fuck, they are going to get real stressed. And you know what that can affect? How responsive your body is. If you're a very stressed person and you're in this very sympathetically driven state, you are going to have much higher cortisol, your digestion's going to be impacted, you're probably going to retain a shitload of water, you won't be as responsive to the deficit that you are trying to create in a prep, which is going to ultimately impact that end goal. Like, I know this because every single time, if I get stressed, you can see it on my body. You can literally see it. I look shit. Whereas if I'm a little bit more chill and calm, which again, harder to do in a prep, but you can, I look way better. So like a prep is enough of a stress without you having all of this mental added stress on top because you're not able to regulate your emotions. I will always say this, a prep is going to expose your weak points. So you want to work on them first. Okay. And you might not know what they are yet, right? So maybe, you know, after you do your prep, you'll know. You know, I always say, I didn't realize I had the worst self-doubt and self-criticism until I did my prep. And now I can't unsee it. So I've done a lot of work to work on that. But you just need to be aware of where these like blind spots might be, but especially the stress management. You need to be able to regulate yourself and calm yourself down and just have emotional intelligence. Again, go to fucking therapy. If you're not able to do any of these things, go to therapy first. Pay for therapy first, then do your bodybuilding prep. Next up, we need to consider your health prior to prep. Now, I said this already, bodybuilding prep is not healthy, especially at the back end, which is what makes it even more important to ensure that you are actually somewhat healthy before the prep starts, because it is only going to get worse. And if you start that prep in an unhealthy position, not only can you really risk your health, but you're probably going to make the prep a lot harder, because your body won't be as responsive. It won't be able to burn as much fat, retain as much muscle, and ultimately have the best end product that you could have. If you have things like poor gut health, poor hormonal health, poor metabolic health, you really should do the work to restore these first and address these first before you dive into the prep, because these are only going to get worse the leaner and leaner you get and the more time you spend in a calorie deficit. If you have really bad digestion, this is going to hugely impact your responsiveness to a deficit. It's going to lead to worse bloating, distension. That's going to affect your look on stage. You could drive up more inflammation and just, again, really harm that end look. Your digestion needs to be in a good place before the prep starts, because it can be negatively impacted by having less fiber, less nutrients by the end, higher stress, lower body fat levels, impacted hormones, impacted thyroid. And I do notice a lot of female competitors tend to have digestive issues. So you should take the time away from a prep before you start the prep to work on these and monitor these, whether it's you have gut dysbiosis or you have some sort of gluten insensitivity or whatever it is that's going on. Take the time to work on that first and figure that out first, because if you don't, you are going to be fighting your body the entire time and every single step of the way, and you're probably going to make it way worse after the prep. It's going to get 1,000 times worse after the prep. Your hormones, your thyroid, these are also going to be massively impacted. If you go into a prep and you already have no menstrual cycle or a very, very irregular menstrual cycle, maybe your thyroid hormones are really, really low, maybe you're dealing with things like Hashimoto's. Again, these are only going to be exacerbated by the prep. Now, I will hold my hands up and say, and I'm always willing to admit when I've made mistakes, I did go into my first prep in 2022 without a menstrual cycle. And I was doing that prep natty. It was not a good idea, okay? It was not a good idea. It took me maybe a year post-show to get my cycle back. I still have a very irregular cycle. And I don't think that that was just because of the prep. I think it's for many reasons, but it probably wasn't smart. And if I could go back, maybe I would change my decision there. But I was stubborn. I wanted to do my prep that year. Nothing was going to stop me. So I did it anyway. But this is something that you need to take time, especially if you are a female who has any form of hormonal disorders. Maybe you have PCOS, endometriosis. Do the work to, I want to say manage your hormones, but optimize your body and how it responds prior to that prep. Same with your thyroid. As soon as you go into a deficit, we're going to see downregulation of thyroid. If you're not an enhanced athlete and you're not using any thyroid supplementation, just be prepared for it to take a little bit of time to come back post-prep. And if you're going into it and you already have a really low thyroid function, losing fat is going to be harder. It is going to be harder. It's going to impact your digestion, going to impact your mood. So again, these are all health things. And this is why any competitor, you should be getting blood work done before prep. You should be looking at all of these things before you start your prep to ensure that they're in a good place. Obviously, athletes who use PEDs can circumvent some of this. You can use thyroid replacement therapy. You can use hormone replacement therapy. I use testosterone replacement therapy, which helps me with my cycle. But you might not be using PEDs. And, you shouldn't really be using those as a crutch either. If you are a female and you really, really, really want to have kids in the next year or two, I don't know if going into a prep is a very good idea, because it is going to impact your hormones. Now, everyone's different. There are some females, I've heard of girls get pregnant on prep. They don't lose their period once on prep. I would say they are the anomaly rather than the norm. The norm is most females will lose their cycle. It might only be for 3 or 4 months. It might be that as soon as you go into a deficit, you lose your cycle. It takes you 6 months post-deficit to get it back. So if you think and you foresee in the near future that you want kids, I would highly reconsider doing the prep, because it is going to have a negative consequence on your ability to get pregnant and have a healthy pregnancy. And if that's been your dream forever, shouldn't you prioritize that? That's just quite simply not something I ever prioritize, because I don't really care for kids. But I'm old enough to make that decision. If you're only 20, 21, 22, take your time with making decisions like that. And when we talk about health, your mental health matters too. You should not be going into a prep to mask it, to deal with any, uncomfortable emotions that you have, to ignore them. I said before, prep will expose your weak points. It will bring out your demons. So make sure your mental health's in a good place, because if it's not, trust me, being very, very hungry and very tired is going to make it 100 times worse. We also really need to understand Why are you doing this? I think this is such an important question. It's a question I ask every single person who inquires with me for coaching. I want to know, why do you want to do a show? What is your reasoning? Because if your reasoning is, I saw XYZ on Instagram and they looked really good, that is not a good enough answer. Like I said, this is a massive commitment. It's going to take up a lot of your time, a lot of your energy. It can be quite a risk to your health. You need to have a deeper meaning. You really have to think about why you like this. I love the bodybuilding lifestyle. I love doing the same shit every day. I wake up every day. I love having structure. I love having routine. I love progressing. I love having a big goal to work towards. I love the person that I've become because of bodybuilding. It's allowed me to build my dream fucking life. I love it for that. And it gives me so much purpose within my day and meaning. I love getting into bed at the end of the day and saying, that's another day done and it's another day that I've progressed. It is my favorite fucking thing in the world. I love the stage bit, don't get me wrong. I love competing, but I actually love everything that bodybuilding gives to me outside of competing. So you really do need to have a good motive, because on the hard days, if the only reason you're doing this is for fucking likes and validation on Instagram, it's not going to carry you through. You know, don't do this for social media clout. Don't do this because you're a coach and you think it's going to help you get clients. It won't. If anything, it might negatively impact your business because you're going to be so fucking tired all the time. You know, you have to have a deeper meaning. So take some time to consider that and consider your why. Why are you doing this? It is really fucking important. I think too many people just jump into a prep before taking the time to think about this. And they're usually the ones who have a shit experience, come out terribly on the back end, and then spend the next 5 to 10 years preaching about how bodybuilding ruined their lives and why nobody should ever do it. And I think we all know multiple people who are like this. And it's not that bodybuilding is terrible, it's that they didn't think about why they should do it in the first place. They did it because they thought it would be good for their social media. They thought it would be good for clout. Stupid fucking reason to do it, right? Good question to ask. If social media stopped existing, would you still compete? If the answer is no, don't do it. Just do a fucking photo shoot. Just be lean. You can do that, right? You know, you can still engage in the bodybuilding lifestyle. You can still do bulking cycles, cutting cycles, but you don't need to go to the true extreme of competing if you don't really have a good reason for it. It's going to be very difficult and very challenging. Next up, we have posing. I touched on this in the cost section about the cost of posing, but also, have you learned how to pose? Do not think that you can start a prep and then learn your posing. That is not going to be enough time. I, for both of my shows and for both of my categories, have started posing 2 years before I started prep because I knew I needed that much time. I am naturally not graceful. I am naturally a giraffe. I don't move and flow and sway. So I needed that time. I'm not saying everyone needs 2 years, but the more time you spend on your posing, the better it's going to look at the end. You do not want to be that person who does 20 plus weeks of fucking hard work in the gym with their food, with their steps, with their cardio, and then ruins it by not being able to display their physique properly because they haven't practiced their posing. I've seen it, we've all seen it. And it is such a shame when someone who has a clearly superior physique loses because they don't know how to do the poses properly, or they're flapping their arms about as if they're trying to take flight as they get into poses, or they just look awkward, they look like they're in pain. Not only is it hard to learn the actual movements, the transitions, the poses, but doing all of that while also making it look effortless, having a smile, knowing when to move your hair, knowing when to move your hands. It's an art. It is a fucking art, especially female classes. It's so difficult. You know, if you're looking at bikini wellness, the posing's a huge aspect of it. You know, people lose. Great example, Franciette Matos. She lost the Olympia because she fucked up one of her poses. She was doing it so bad that she actually lost. She lost her title. Do you know how hard it is to lose your title as a 3-time winner? It's very fucking hard. And because one of her poses was just so off, Issa had her. And like, again, that's obviously top of the top, but still, like, do yourself the service and the credit of actually taking the time to learn. So you have your mandatories, your comparisons that you need to learn. You need to learn your walk. You need to learn your routine. You know, maybe you're doing PCA figure. You have another routine to do to music. You need to be able to change positions on the stage. Maybe you have to turn, walk to the back. There is so much. You have your conditioning to think about within your posing. You know, it's not enough to just do one round and that's it. No, you have to be able to be up on stage holding poses for like 5 to 10 minutes. It's a lot. You know, your back is going to be sore, your feet are going to be sore. You have to do the practice and do the groundwork there. Like I said, you should be getting lessons. In your off season, I would get a lesson every 2 or 3 months. Keep on top of practicing as often as you can. In a prep, every month, if not more. You should be practicing. I practice every day because I don't want to let myself down by not being spot on with my posing. And especially as your physique changes, as your body changes, you're going to have to change things. You're going to have to, you know, slightly alter poses, but you should be staying on top of it and practicing as much as you can. And that's a big component of bodybuilding. You know, I think a lot of people forget that. They think that it is just train, diet. No, the posing that's game day. You know, like that's the end result. You don't just stand there like fucking can do a front double bicep and walk off. No. To be able to do the correct poses for the class, for the category, get a posing coach, get a reputable posing coach. Again, I highly recommend Sanaya with Limitless Flow Posing. Amy and Mel are also amazing too. But get a good posing coach and make sure, I would say by the time you start prep, you should be able to do your mandatories and your transitions. Like that should be already down. And like I said, you can adjust them, you can make them better as you go through the prep, but that should be something that you already know what you're doing. You have an awareness of where your body is in space, you're able to control it. So fucking important. And lastly, this is the last thing you need to consider before you commit to bodybuilding. Have you done a successful fat loss phase before? Again, probably the most important thing on this whole list. Dieting is a skill. Fat loss is a skill. Being in a deficit and adhering to the deficit is a skill. You need to have practiced all of those skills before prep starts. If you don't, you are in for a fucking bad time. You know, I cannot imagine your first diet being something as high pressure as a prep. So you should go into a prep with full confidence that whatever plan is given to you, you are going to stick to it and you are going to adhere to it. You don't need to have gotten stage lean. You don't need to have gotten all the way in, but you probably should have done a very successful diet where you got pretty lean before. Again, coming back to photo shoot preps, I love them because they give you a chance to practice the skills and to see if you actually enjoy it and if you can actually commit to it. And every single time you do a diet, you get better. You learn more about how to structure your days to suit you. You learn more about what foods you like having in your plan so that you can be adherent and feel satisfied. You learn what little tricks work for you. You know, now that I have dieted so many times now, the blueprint is there. I know exactly what my days have to look like for me to be in a deficit. I know that I have to wake up at a certain time, I fast for a certain amount of time, I do my cardio, I do my steps, this is when I do my training, this is when I eat my meals, these are the meals that I eat. I like to have something sweet in the evening, so I save some Greek yogurt for them. I love a Pepsi Max. Like all of these things, I have found all the little tricks and habits that work for me because I've done this so many times that now my coach could tell me to eat nothing for the next 16 weeks. I'm not saying I'd love it, I would do it. And I know that I can do it because I've done fucking hard diets before. I've done diets where I'm on pretty low calories by the end. I can do it and I have no question in my mind about my ability to do it. I've also felt the feelings. I know what it's like to be unmotivated. I know what it's like to be hungry, to be tired, to not want to show up and to still do it anyway. I've done all of that. And if you've done all of that outside of a prep, okay, the prep is going to be harder, like it's like next level, but at least you have some sort of an idea of what you are going into. So that's pretty much it. That's my anti-bodybuilding pitch. So like I said, if you've listened to this and you go, okay, yeah, I've thought about all those things. I know I've thought about the cost, my why, I know my posing, I've practiced diets, all of that sort of stuff. I understand the risks, I've worked on my health, I know exactly what I'm in for, and I still fucking want to do it. Great. Go and do it and have the best time because like I said, I fucking love bodybuilding. It's my favorite thing ever. But if there's things in this that have maybe been a bit of a red flag for you, take the time to address them. It's not to say that you can never bodybuild, but give it time. There's no rush. The stage is not going anywhere. They're not going to stop bodybuilding tomorrow. It's only getting bigger. It's only getting better. So don't rush. There is honestly no rush. I didn't compete until I was 26 and okay, it was a bit later than some other people would compete, but I'm so glad I waited because I had a really successful first prep. Now I'm 28 and I know I'm going to have a successful second prep. So maybe was I 27? Was I 25? I don't know, 2022. I was 25. Was I 25? Maybe. Either way, 25, 26. You know, some people get into competing when they're 20. I have people on my team who are 16, 19 who want to compete, and that's amazing. And I say the same thing to all of them. There's no rush. Let's take our time. Let's take our time and make sure we know. We know, you know the risks involved, you have informed consent, and you know what you're doing. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's been somewhat helpful. Like I said at the start, if you are interested in working with a coach, I would love to have you. I'm currently taking on one-to-one coaching clients for bodybuilding and for lifestyle as well. I have a team working under me and we take on all types of clients. And once again, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give me a like, give me a comment, and share it on your social media. Tag me at emma.curvin. I always appreciate that as well. And I will catch you in the next one.